Hey everyone, and welcome to a quick video about Battle Brothers Warriors of the North, which is a new expansion you might already know about. It's coming out on May the 9th. And while the biggest feature of the expansion is the entirely new faction of Northern Barbarians, with their own gear, their own unique mechanics, and so on, the first feature you will notice when playing Warriors of the North are the new origin stories you can start your campaign from. And we are going to take a look at all of them. It's not just about the story itself. Each one of these gives you special bonuses you cannot otherwise get. And they can make the campaign easier, they can make it harder, they can make it quite interesting, as you will see. And first we got Rebuilding a Company. This is basically the old start. This is how the game worked until this point. So if you want to play with the old start, you can go for Rebuilding a Company. Then there's a new company. This is kind of the same, but you skip the kind of a tutorial section. And this is basically just a quick start without any advantages or disadvantages. And I will show you each one of these. So here's an example start with a new company. You get dropped into the world, and you have a company with 3 brothers. They will always start with the same gear. So you will have the woodcutter's axe, a spear and a shield, and a light crossbow. And that's basically it. This isn't really much different than the old start, you just skip the initial battle. And you can go do whatever you want, you don't start with any quests. Then we got the first truly custom start, the Northern Raiders. You start with 3 experienced barbarians, and you also start with bad relations to most human factions, and you have a higher chance to get any items from slain enemies as loot. So you start with a major disadvantage and with a major advantage. This is very different from a standard start. And I'll show you an example start with this one. And here's an example start with the Northern Raiders. From what I checked, you will always start in the northern part of the map. I mean, that kind of makes sense. There will always be one hostile house, one neutral house, and one threatening house. And you will always start in the middle of hostile territory. Sometimes you will be closer, sometimes you will be further away from the neutral house, but you will always have to travel some distance to actually reach them. And here's our company. We got 3 barbarians. They will always be level 3, they will always start with 200 weapons. The exact weapons will vary, but it will always be 200 weapons. In this case I started with 2 cleavers and 1 crude axe. And we will always start with some loot that we will be able to sell once we reach actual friendly territory. And you can level them up right away. They are fairly strong, but the big downside is that you start in the middle of hostile territory. So I cannot really interact with this town because, I mean, they are hostile, so I can't even enter it. I will have to travel to reach friendly territory. So that's Northern Barbarians. Let's check out the next one. So next up we got Peasant Militia, and this is a very different start from Northern Raiders. I mean, they are all quite different from each other. With Peasant Militia, we start with a roster of 12 poorly equipped peasants. We can take up to 16 men into battle at once, and have up to 25 in our roster. However, we can never hire anyone who isn't a low-born peasant. So that is a major disadvantage for the entire campaign. This severely limits who you can actually recruit into your company. And let's check out an example start. So here's an example start with Peasant Militia. All the noble houses will start neutral, as they usually do. And this is our actual company. So we can see that morale is already pretty damn low. And these are our brothers. One of them is level 2, but he's still not very well equipped. He has a short sword. And we have all kinds of dudes in here. They all have really poor equipment, but some of them have fairly decent armor. So we have leather lamellar armor here with 95. But other than that, they mostly got rags with 20 armor value. And not very good weapons. But all things considered, this is a pretty good company to start with. They might be poorly equipped, but we got 12 dudes. But yes, we have severely limited sources of new brothers. So next up we got deserters. We start with 3 deserters and decent armor, but lower funds and a noble house that wants to hunt you down. And our men will always be first to act in the very first round of combat, so that's a really interesting bonus right there. And let's check out an example start. So here we are. And we will always have one hostile noble house right here. And we start very close to them, or sometimes even in the middle of their territory. But we always start next to the hostile house, from what I checked. And here's our company. We got 1 level 2 guy, and 2 level 1 guys. We got a crossbow, we got a one-handed weapon and a shield, and then another one-handed weapon and a shield. And our background will always be deserter on all of them. And that's basically it for these guys. The bonus where you always start first is really interesting. That could be a really nice advantage against some enemy types. Anyhow, let's check out the next one. So next up, we got a band of poachers. We start with a group of 3 woodsmen. They move faster and can always get a scouting report for any enemies near you. And they also carry less items in their inventory. So, I can't say I'm a fan of the travel light penalty, but in the end it doesn't really affect actual battles. You just need to up your inventory management game. So let's check them out, shall we? So, here we are. We will start in the middle of the forest. I restarted a few times just to verify, and 1 house will always be called, the other 2 will be neutral. And here's our company. We will have 3 ranged dudes. They will have a combination of poacher and hunter backgrounds, and they will have a staff sling, a hunting bow, and a short bow. So basically you start with 3 ranged dudes. Which means they will be quite weak in melee, so this could be interesting. And not much else to say about this start, really. Let's check out the next one. So next up we got the hardest start by far out of all the ones we talked about so far, as indicated by the scores up here, which is the trading caravan. We start with 2 caravan hands in our employ. We get 10% better prices for buying and selling. However, we also start with no renown and gain renown at half the normal rate. So if you like trading, this can be an interesting start to play with, but it's definitely harder. And here's our company. We got 2 dudes, so 2 caravan hands. Their gear is not exactly good, as you can see. But we have quite a lot of stuff here. We have quite a bit of food. We got some trade goods that we can sell. And I guess that's that. They will both have caravan hunt background, and noble houses will be neutral. So this is, like I said, definitely the most challenging start so far. So next up we got the Dovecul Cultists. We start with a group of 4 cultists with poor equipment, and many more cultists may flock to you for free. Also, Dovecul will occasionally demand sacrifices from you, but also bestow boons upon those loyal to him. I haven't actually played with them, so I can't tell you what exactly those boons might be, but I can show you the cultists themselves. And here we are, with our cultists. The noble houses will always be neutral, so nothing special to see there. And here's our group. They will always start with 3 cultist hoods, and they will always have the Fanatic of Dovecul ability, which gives them +5 resolve, and no morale check will be triggered upon allies dying. So that is actually quite nice. Their gear is quite poor, so there's that. But more cultists might join us for free over time. And that's that. Nothing else to really see here. Let's check out the next one. So next up we got one of the most interesting starts, especially if you like a challenge, which is Lone Wolf. You start with a single experienced hedge knight, with great equipment but low funds. You can also never have more than 12 men in your roster. And furthermore, this is the only start that adds a special fail state. If your hedge knight dies, the campaign ends. So that is really interesting, I like that. This is the only start with a special fail state. And here we are. Here's our dude. So he will always be Hedge Knight. And we will start with a 200 weapon, we will start with pretty damn good armor, 260 armor, and with a really nice helm, 210. We will not have a lot of funds, but it's enough to hire a few dudes. And the noble houses will be neutral. So that's that. I quite like this start, it's really interesting. So finally, we got Beast Slayers. This is a pretty interesting one as well. We start with 3 Beast Slayers and decent equipment, as well as some Beast trophies. We can see tracks from further away. Each beast we slay has a 25% chance to drop an additional trophy, and most people don't trust your kind, so you get 10% worse prizes. So this will make it easier to get some of the rare components, which can be quite useful. And let's check out our company. So here we are, and here's our company. So we start with 3 Beast Slayers, they will always have the same background, they will always be level 2. Their gear is not exactly great, but we also have some wolf pelts. We have witch hair, which is a pretty rare one, especially this early on. And that's that, the noble houses will be neutral. And not much else to say about this start really. We have decent amount of money, enough to hire some people right away. And that's the final start. Technically there's one more start, and the last option is random. So we can start a campaign with a randomly picked origin. And that's that. So that's quite a few different ways to start the campaign now. I quite like some of these. You can have a very different campaign based on which one you pick. You can have a more challenging one, you can have an easier one. None of these is like super easy mode. Obviously Peasant Militia will be pretty easy to start with, but not being able to hire anyone who isn't a low-born peasant is a pretty harsh penalty. So I quite like these options. Let me know which one is your favorite one out of all of these. And thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.